I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to end up here, typing something like this. I always assumed betrayal came with warning signs, lipstick on a collar, hushed phone calls, late nights with weak excuses. But sometimes, it comes in soft voices and shared glances, in things that are just a little too innocent to prove, but not innocent enough to ignore. My name's Claire. I'm 34, been married to Mark for 7 years. We met in college, started from nothing, and built a life I was proud of. He was my calm in the storm, steady and kind, the sort of man you trust without question. Until now. The storm came back into town 6 months ago, in the form of my younger sister Olivia. Olivia was always the beautiful one. The wild one. She could get away with anything, and usually did. She left home at 19, bouncing between cities, jobs, men. She'd disappear for years, then show up like nothing happened, always with some story about how this time was different. When she moved back to our hometown, I thought maybe she was finally ready to settle down. Said she wanted a fresh start. Said she missed real family. I believed her. That was my first mistake. Mark was the one who got her a job, she needed work, and there was an opening at his company. I vouched for her. Told him she was trying. Told him to give her a chance. Second mistake. At first, everything seemed fine. She was polite, even sweet. We had her over for dinner a few times, and she acted like she was trying to reconnect. She laughed at Mark's dumb jokes, helped me clean the dishes, played with our dog like she actually cared. But I started noticing things. Small things. She started dressing nicer. Always wore perfume, the kind Mark once said he liked. She called him Marky once. Said it was a joke. I let it slide. Then I caught her texting him late at night. She said it was work stuff. He said the same. I wanted to believe it. I asked him to set boundaries. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Claire, come on. It's your sister. I know how crazy this all sounds. I hate how paranoid it makes me feel, like I'm the one losing my mind. But last Friday, I came home early from work. Olivia was in our kitchen. Alone. In my shirt. Making Mark coffee. He wasn't even surprised to see me. "Oh, hey babe," he said. Liv dropped by. "Hope you don't mind." She just smiled. Like she knew. I went upstairs, locked the door, and stared at my reflection for an hour. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just kept thinking, how long? How far? I haven't told anyone. Not yet. Not even him. But we have a trip planned this weekend. A romantic getaway to Vermont. Just the two of us. Supposed to be a reset. But I've already packed something extra in my bag. Not clothes. Not makeup. A question. A real one. And I'm going to ask it. Are you sleeping with my sister? Next chapter, I'll tell you exactly how that went down. Let's just say. I didn't like the answer. We drove in silence most of the way. Vermont in the fall is supposed to be beautiful, golden leaves, crisp air, everything picture perfect. But all I remember is the silence. The way Mark kept his hands on the wheel like he was concentrating too hard. The way he avoided looking at me when we stopped for gas. Like he knew what was coming. I told myself I wouldn't bring it up until we got to the cabin. No fighting in the car. No tears on the highway. Be smart. Be calm. Be sure. The cabin was beautiful. He'd rented it for the weekend, wood-burning fireplace, view of the lake, a little dock out back. He kissed me on the forehead when we arrived, and for a second, I almost believed none of this was real. That we were just us again. We made dinner together. Pasta and cheap red wine. He put on that playlist I liked, the one he made me 5 years ago. He was trying. God, he was trying. Or pretending. After dinner, we sat in front of the fire. I waited until he finished his glass. And then I asked. "Mark, are you sleeping with my sister?" The fire popped. He blinked. Smiled. Like I told a bad joke. Then his smile faded. He didn't lie. Didn't laugh. Didn't pretend to be offended. He just said, "Claire." And in that one word, I knew. I stood up. My legs shook. My mouth felt like sandpaper. How long? He put his head in his hands. Whispered, a couple months. I laughed. Actually laughed. That bitter, broken kind of laugh that sounds like crying. But I didn't cry. You let her into our house, I said. You let her sit across from me. Lie to me. Every night. Every goddamn night. He stood up, hands out, like he wanted to hold me. I backed away. I didn't mean for it to happen. They always say that. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just walked into the bedroom, shut the door, and sat on the floor until the fire went out. Next morning, I told him it was over. I drove us back. Didn't speak. Just stared out the window and counted the exits until home. That night, I packed my things. Told him he could stay until he found a new place. He didn't argue. A week later, he moved out. Straight into Olivia's apartment. They didn't even try to hide it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came a few days later, when I told my parents everything. And they told me to forgive your sister, she's family. I didn't want to tell my parents. I really didn't. But part of me, the little girl still trying to believe in some kind of justice, thought they'd be on my side. That maybe, just maybe, they'd be as angry as I was. That they'd call Olivia and tear her apart the way only a mother or father can. I called them the night after Mark moved out. I was still sleeping in the guest room, though the bed was mine now. The master bedroom felt like it still belonged to a ghost. Mom picked up. I didn't even say hello. I said, Mark cheated on me with Olivia. There was a pause. Then she said, Claire, are you sure? Not, oh my God. Not, what did she do? Just doubt. Woven into the first breath. I told her everything. The flirting, the late-night texts, the trip to Vermont, the confession. Her voice got tight, like she was trying to hold it together, not for me, but for Olivia. Sweetheart, she said. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they didn't mean. I hung up. She called back 3 times. I let it ring. The next day, Dad called. I picked up, hoping, God help me, hoping, that maybe he'd be different. More blunt. More angry. But he was worse. Claire, listen, your sister's going through a lot right now. I swear, I nearly dropped the phone. She's not the one who was cheated on, I said. Silence. Then he had the audacity to say, you know how Olivia is. You've always known. Like that made it okay. Like this had been my mistake, letting a snake into my home and acting surprised when it bit. The final straw came that Sunday. They invited me to dinner. I was stupid enough to go. They acted like it was normal. Olivia was there. So was Mark. Sitting at the table, smiling like they were already married. My mother kissed her cheek. My father poured Mark a beer. I walked out before the appetizers were served. Next day, I sent a message to our family group chat. To those who think I should just move on and keep the family together, don't worry. I'm doing exactly that. Moving on. Without any of you. Then I blocked them all. Mother, father, sister. Every aunt, every cousin who told me to be the bigger person. Everyone who said, family is family. If blood meant so much to them, they could choke on it. I packed what I could in my car. I left the house to the market. Quit my job the next day. Signed a lease in another state 2 weeks later. No forwarding address. No goodbye. Just, gone. That was 4 years ago. And for the first time since everything shattered, I started to feel free. But freedom's lonely when all you've known is betrayal. I thought I'd be alone forever. Until I met Daniel. I met Daniel on a Wednesday. Not in some romantic, faded way. No bumping into each other at the grocery store. No spilled coffee. No stolen glances across a crowded room. It was a support group. I'd been in therapy for almost a year by then, twice a month, slow and steady. My therapist suggested I try a small divorce recovery circle. Just to hear from others, she said. You might not feel so alone. Daniel was the quiet one. Sat in the back. Spoke when he had something to say, but never to fill space. His story was hard. He'd been married 10 years. Thought they were happy, until he found out she had a second life online. Whole other relationships. Fantasies that spilled into reality. The betrayal broke him. He didn't talk about it with bitterness, just clarity. The kind you only get when the worst already happened and all that's left is truth. I think that's what drew me to him. We got coffee after the third session. No pressure. No flirting. Just two people who knew what it meant to be gutted and still get up the next day. Over time, coffee turned into walks. Walks turned into dinners. Dinners turned into mornings where we didn't want to leave the bed because we were finally safe. He never asked me to explain everything at once. He let me tell it in pieces, the sister, the husband, the dinner table that turned into a firing squad. When I told him about the night in Vermont, about asking Mark the question and hearing the truth, Daniel didn't flinch. He just said, "I'm glad you asked." He never made me feel like I was damaged goods. Never once said, "Well, at least you didn't have kids," or "Time heals everything." Instead, he said, "You survived hell. That doesn't mean you owe anyone heaven." 2 years later, we got married. Just a courthouse, 2 witnesses, and lunch after. His family was there. Not mine. But his mother hugged me like she'd known me since birth. His dad called me kiddo and brought me a homemade pie. His sister gave me a necklace that belonged to their grandmother and said, "Welcome home." For the first time in my life, I knew what it meant to be chosen. Not tolerated. Not endured. But loved, without condition, without comparison. We bought a house outside of Denver. Nothing fancy, but the backyard gets just enough sun, and in the winter, you can hear the wind whistle through the trees like a song. We had a son last year. Caleb. He's got Daniel's eyes. Sometimes I catch myself watching them together, the way Daniel holds him, talks to him, rocks him to sleep, and I wonder what my own father would think if he saw this. Then I remember it doesn't matter. Because Daniel is the only man I want Caleb to learn from. But the past isn't always done with you just because you're done with it. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just one line. "We need to talk. It's important. Olivia." I hadn't seen her handwriting in 4 years. And God help me, my hand still shook. I tore the letter in half. Then I taped it back together. It sat on the counter for 3 days. I didn't tell Daniel at first. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't want to bring that poison into the house. Our life was clean. Simple. Full of love and late-night feedings and Daniel's godawful dad jokes. But that letter, just one line, one signature, made it feel like the walls were thinner than I thought. I finally told him Saturday night after Caleb went down. We were on the couch, a movie playing quietly, half-finished wine in our glasses. I handed him the taped-up letter and waited. He read it. No expression. Then he folded it up and said, "What do you want to do?" Not, "What does she want," or, "Should you call her?" Just that. "What do you want?" I said, "Nothing. I want her to stay gone." He nodded. "Then she stays gone." That should have been the end of it. But the next week, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. And another. All different numbers. All short messages. "Claire, it's Mom. Please call." "Claire, it's Dad. We heard from Olivia. Please, just 5 minutes." Even Mark. I didn't even have his number saved, but I knew that voice. Still smug under the sadness. "Claire. It's been years. We all made mistakes. Olivia needs your help." I blocked every number. Deleted every voicemail. Changed my number that night. But they found another way. It was a Tuesday. Cold, windy, one of those days where the world feels like it's leaning sideways. I was picking Caleb up from daycare. Walked out with him bundled in my arms, keys in hand, humming something under my breath. And there she was. Olivia. Standing by my car. Older. Paler. Her hair shorter. Still pretty, but something in her face had sunk in, like life had finally caught up. I stopped dead in my tracks. She smiled. Nervously. "Hey, Claire." I turned and walked back toward the building. She followed. Wait. Please. Just listen. A teacher came out, noticed the tension. Everything okay here? I said, this woman doesn't have permission to be on school property. The teacher narrowed her eyes and nodded. I'll call security. Olivia stepped back. Okay. I'm sorry. Just, please. I need 5 minutes. She slid something into my diaper bag before walking off. I didn't look at it until we got home. It was a manila envelope. Inside, a letter from a doctor. A list of test results. A post-it note in Olivia's handwriting. Kidney failure. Stage 4. I'm a match. You're a perfect one. Please. I sat at the table for hours after Daniel went to bed, reading the words over and over. Stage 4. Not long left. She needs a kidney. And of all the people on this earth, I'm the one who could save her. God has a cruel sense of humor. I didn't tell Daniel. Not right away. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust myself. I knew if I heard his voice, if he said what I already believed, I'd never go. And I needed to go. I needed to see her. To look her in the eye and see if I could feel anything but hate. The hospital was sterile, quiet, full of that soft hum machines make when they're pretending to save people. I told the nurse my name. Told her I was here to visit Olivia Myers. Her face changed. Not surprised, just tired. Like she already knew the backstory, or at least the shape of it. Room 214, she said. End of the hall. I walked like I was underwater. The hallway stretched forever, and part of me hoped she'd be asleep, or gone, or not real. But she was there. Propped up in the bed. Tubes in her arm. Pale and thinner than I'd ever seen her. She looked up. And smiled. Claire. I didn't smile back. Didn't sit. Just stood there. You came. I'm not here to hug you. She nodded slowly. I didn't expect you to. I looked around. Where's Mark? Her face shifted. A flicker of something, pain, maybe. Or guilt. We're not together anymore. I said nothing. She kept talking. He left after after I did to him what he helped do to you. That caught me off guard. She looked down at her hands. I cheated. Again. Different guy. I think Mark always thought he'd be the exception. Turns out I only know how to burn things. I folded my arms. So now you come crawling back because you need a kidney? I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. I didn't choose to get sick. You didn't choose to betray me either, right? She didn't respond. I took a step closer. You stole my husband. My life. My family. You smiled in my face while you destroyed everything behind my back. And now, you want me to cut out a piece of myself and hand it over like none of that happened? Tears filled her eyes, but I didn't care. She whispered, I'm scared. I was too. 4 years ago. You didn't care then. I do now. I nodded. Let that sit in the air between us. Then I pulled something from my coat pocket. A folded paper. The compatibility test results. You were right. I'm a perfect match. Her eyes widened. She leaned forward like hope was something solid she could touch. But I'm not giving you my kidney. Silence. You could hear her heart monitor skip a beat. She blinked. What? I came to say it to your face. So you'd know. So there's no wondering. She stared at me, like I'd just slapped her. I'm a mother now, Olivia. I have a life. A real family. And I'm not going to risk it, for you. I've spent years putting myself back together, piece by piece. I'm not going to cut any of that away. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Tears spilled. You always got what you wanted. Mom and Dad made sure of it. You wrecked my life and got praised for surviving. But this? This is mine. My no. You don't get to take anything else. I turned to leave. As I reached the door, I heard her whisper, voice trembling. I thought you were better than this. I paused. Then said without turning around. I am. That's why I'm walking out, not dragging you behind me. And I walked away. They showed up the next morning. Daniel was on the porch with Caleb, feeding him bits of banana while the fall sun warmed the deck. I was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, still shaking from what I'd done the day before. The knock wasn't loud. Just firm. Like they'd practiced it. I opened the door and saw them all. My mother. My father. And Mark. No, Olivia. She sent the cavalry. I didn't say a word. Just stared. My mother stepped forward first. She looked older. Not just aged, diminished. Like life had been grinding her down and she never figured out why. Claire, she said softly. Can we come in? No. She flinched. My father stepped beside her, straightening his coat like he was preparing for a business meeting. Same posture he used to use before lectures at dinner. We just want to talk. You've had 4 years to talk. You used them to stay silent. Mark hadn't spoken yet. He stood a step behind them, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered like a kid caught stealing. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. Daniel stayed seated with Caleb, watching quietly. He didn't move, just locked eyes with me. Like a lighthouse in the fog. I turned to the trio. Make it quick. My mother started crying. She's dying, Claire. She was dead to me the day she slept with my husband. That hit harder than I expected. She looked like I'd slapped her. We made mistakes, she said. But you're her sister. She's not mine. She gave that up. Mark finally spoke. His voice was low, hollow. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Claire. I know I don't deserve it. I raised an eyebrow. Then why are you here? He looked down. Because I know what it's like now. To lose everything. To see someone you trusted throw you away. I nearly laughed. You helped burn the house down, Mark. You don't get sympathy because you got caught in the fire. He nodded. Didn't argue. Just looked up, and for a second, I saw the same man who used to make me pancakes at midnight when I couldn't sleep. The man who held me when I got the call about Grandma. The man who used to look at me like I was the only thing in the room. He was gone now. But ghosts can still look familiar. I loved you, he said. You don't do what you did to someone you love. My father finally stepped forward. Arms crossed. Tone firm. We're not asking you to be best friends again. We're asking you to be human. You're a match. She's out of time. I took a deep breath. Held it. Then said, I'm not giving my kidney to someone who tried to take my soul. He opened his mouth, but I cut him off. You all picked her. Over me. Again and again. Even after what she did. You circled the wagons around her like I was the threat. My mother whispered, she's your blood. No, I said. She's your burden. And now she's your consequence. I turned to Mark. You two deserve each other. You really do. But she didn't even want you long enough to make it last. He looked like he'd been punched. My voice cracked only once, just once. I gave you everything. And you turned me into a joke. They stood there, stunned. I stepped back toward the door. You came here thinking you could guilt me. That's all any of you ever had for me, shame, guilt, expectations. But I don't carry that weight anymore. I buried it with our history. I opened the door. Daniel stood now, holding Caleb on his hip. My family looked at him. And they knew. They weren't my family anymore. I turned back to them one last time. If she dies knowing I walked away. Let that be the last thing I ever give her. And I shut the door. Behind it, my husband. My son. My real family. No more calls came after that. No texts. No letters. No surprise visits. Just silence. And God, it was beautiful. It's funny, when people think of peace, they imagine soft music, warm blankets, maybe a cabin in the woods. But real peace? It's the absence of things. No alarms. No half-truths. No voices pulling you in 10 different directions. Just you. And whatever you've got left. For me, that meant Daniel and Caleb. Saturday pancakes. Bubble baths with toy boats. Laundry days and long walks and the quiet, everyday moments that don't make movies, but they make a life. I didn't think about Olivia much. Not at first. I figured they'd keep trying. Figured guilt had more fuel left in the tank. But then nothing came. Weeks turned into months. Winter melted into spring. Daniel and I took Caleb to the coast. His first time seeing the ocean. He ran from the waves like they were chasing him, squealing so loud people laughed from their beach towels. I sat on a blanket, watched them run, and realized I hadn't thought about Olivia in days. Not once. Until that night. Caleb was asleep. Daniel was doing dishes. I checked my email, one of those old accounts I rarely opened. There it was. Subject line, she's gone. No message. No signature. Just a photo attached. I clicked it. It was a funeral program. Black and white. Olivia's face, thinner, faded, but still Olivia, framed in flowers and that same lazy script funeral homes use to make everything seem softer than it is. She was dead. 32 years old. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not crying. Not smiling. Just still. Daniel found me there an hour later. I showed him the photo. He sat beside me. Said nothing. Just held my hand. That night, I stood at the edge of our backyard, under the stars. Cold grass under my feet, air sharp in my lungs. I whispered, goodbye. And it didn't echo. It didn't need to. Because she was gone, and somehow, I was still here. Still standing. Still whole. That was the moment I finally understood something I never did before. You don't need closure with the people who broke you. You need distance. And then time. And then someone to hold your hand while you rebuild. I went inside. Caleb stirred in his crib, murmuring nonsense. Daniel wrapped his arms around me as we stood over him. And in that quiet, steady room, I felt something I hadn't in years. Safe. It arrived in the spring mail, tucked between a credit card offer and a coupon for carpet cleaning. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. It was Mom's. I almost tossed it in the trash without opening it. Almost. But old habits die hard, and curiosity dies harder. I took it to the kitchen. Caleb was napping, and Daniel was out back sanding down the porch rails. The envelope was thin. Just 2 pages. The first was short. Tired. Claire. I'm sorry for everything. I mean that. Your sister is gone. Your father is sick now. I've lost more than I ever thought I would. But I miss you most of all. Love. Mom. The second page was what gutted me. It was a picture of me, maybe 14 years old. Sitting on the back steps of our old house, arms wrapped around Olivia. We were laughing. Hair tangled, bare feet dirty, faces flushed with summer sun. I remembered that day. We'd just snuck ice cream from the freezer. Got caught. Got chased. Collapsed laughing. I stared at that photo a long time. And for the first time since she died, I cried. Not for Olivia. Not really. I cried for the version of us that might have been. For what we could have been, if she hadn't been the storm that tore through my life. If our parents hadn't let it happen. If love had been something shared, not hoarded. But tears aren't bridges. They're rain. They wash things away, they don't rebuild. Daniel came in, saw the photo, the letter, the look on my face. He said, "Do you want to call her?" I shook my head. "I think she wants forgiveness." He nodded. "And?" "I've already forgiven her," I said. But then I looked down at the picture again. "Doesn't mean I need to invite her in." He kissed my forehead, walked over to the shredder, and held it up. I paused. Then nodded. The machine hummed. The letter went in first. Then the photo. Gone. I made dinner that night with a kind of calm I hadn't felt in years. Olivia was buried. Mark was long gone. My parents had made their choices, and so had I. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need to scream or post online or prove anything to anyone. I just needed that moment, standing in my kitchen, sauce bubbling on the stove, my son babbling from the high chair, my husband humming off key in the other room, to know I made it. I chose peace. And peace chose me back. We never got a second letter. Not from my mother. Not from anyone. No more calls, no emails, no surprise knocks. Just silence. And that silence grew roots. Caleb started preschool this fall. He cried the first day, clung to my neck like the world was ending. Daniel knelt beside him, handed him his tiny backpack, and whispered something that made him laugh through his tears. I stood by the door and watched the two of them, father and son, and felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Pride. Not the pride that comes from success or applause or trophies on a shelf. But the pride that comes from survival. From building a life out of splinters and learning how to hold it without bleeding all over again. Daniel and I still fight sometimes. About laundry. About the thermostat. About which cartoons Caleb should be allowed to watch before bed. But he never raises his voice. Never lies. Never makes me feel small. There's this quiet trust between us, built slow, brick by brick, day after day. The kind of love that doesn't need grand gestures or poetic vows. Just showing up. Again and again. One night, we were sitting on the porch. Caleb was asleep. The sky was full of stars. I said, "Do you think she hated me in the end?" Daniel didn't ask who I meant. He just said, "I think she hated herself more." I nodded. That felt right. I looked out at the dark, at the trees swaying in the wind. "I don't regret saying no," I said. "You shouldn't. But I do wish we'd been something else. Me and her." Daniel reached over, took my hand. "We can wish for what could have been without letting it steal what is." We sat there in silence for a long time. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter. Not hollow. Not grieving. Just done. The fire that used to burn in my chest had gone out. Not from exhaustion, but because I finally didn't need it to keep warm. I was already home. Not the house I grew up in. Not the family I was born into. But the one I built, with love, sweat, stubbornness, and 1,000 little boundaries that made this place mine. Sometimes people ask me if I ever hear from them. I don't. And if I did? I wouldn't answer. Because I have a son who will never doubt where he belongs. I have a husband who never flinches when I fall apart. And I have a peace they can't touch, not with guilt, not with blood, not with sickness or sorrow or regret. They made their choices. And I made mine. I chose to walk away. And I never looked back.